So in today's video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to add an additional B500 battery, these batteries that you see right here, to an already existing EP800. And as I mentioned in previous videos, the EP800 here from Bluetti is a solid choice if you're looking for whole home battery storage, solar backup, or if you're just looking to be more energy independent from the grid. The Bluetti EP800 is a split phase 240 volt system, and it has a max continuous running watts of 7,600 watts. So it can run those large appliances in your home. You can even run your traditional whole home 4-ton, 5-ton unit air conditioning on this thing, as long as you have a smooth starter. When we put a smooth starter on our air conditioning here, it took the starting amps down from 125 amps, which is a little too high for the EP800, all the way down to 32 amps, which this thing starts with no problems at all. The EP800 can also surge to over 70 amps, and you can connect up to 9,000 watts of solar panels to it. Now, the max amount of B500 batteries, these things right here that you can add to the EP800, is 4. So that brings your total kilowatt hours of storage, of battery storage, to about 20, just under 20 kilowatt hours for one EP800. But you could add 2 of these in parallel, put 2 of them in parallel, and double that if you wanted to. And Bluetti can also hook you up with a trusted installer if you don't feel like you can handle the install of this thing by yourself. Now, the cost to purchase this Bluetti EP800 with the full amount of battery storage, that's 4 of these B500 batteries, which totals about 20 kilowatt hours, is about $14,999. And that is before my 5% discount code that you can get by using the discount code TEXANEP800, and also before the federal tax incentive. Now, with my discount code included and the federal tax incentive, your total out the door cost for this thing is going to be right around $10,000. And that is before adding solar panels to it or professional installation if you do need that. So it is a sizable investment. Now, there is a way where you can bring that cost down to get started. And you could do that by only buying the EP800 with 2 of these B500 batteries up front. And you can add the B500 batteries later as your budget allows. To purchase the EP800 with 2 of these batteries, it's about $8,999. And again, that's before my discount code or the federal tax incentive included. If you take those into account, then your total cost is going to be right around $6,000. And you also don't have to add solar panels to this thing right away if you don't want to. You can just use it in standby mode to be there just in case you lost power to the grid. It would take over in less than 20 milliseconds and power your entire home, or everything on the critical loads panel that you have connected to it. Or you can use the EP800 to power your home during those times of day when electric rates skyrocket. If you have those time of use rates from your electric provider, you can set this thing in the app to power your home during those times. Say it's from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. You can power it using the batteries only, and then once the rates come back down, you can tell the EP800 to charge it back up during the cheaper rates time. And you can do all of that on the Bluetti app in the time of use setting. And now that you know that adding batteries as your budget allows is an option for this thing, let me get into showing you how to swap one of these batteries out. All right, so we're going to be adding a battery. One of these big units here is a battery, just under 5 kilowatt hours each. We're going to add one to this Bluetti EP800. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove the inverter. This top box here is the inverter. We won't disconnect any of these other batteries. We'll leave those in place because they're all screwed in or lagged in to the wall. So to make this easy, we're just going to put the new battery right on top of this one. So this will be a battery, and then we'll put the inverter right on top of that. Now, a few things we're going to have to do. Number one, the PV wires that come in here, we're going to have to extend this box about, I'd say about 18 inches higher, because these are going to be higher and my wires aren't long enough here to reach it when I put the inverter back on top of the next battery. We're also going to have to extend the little Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antenna here. We'll have to extend as well and put that up a little higher. And then we're going to have to disconnect. So this is the power. This is basically the backup power supply from the grid that goes into the EP800. We're going to need to disconnect that from the disconnect box here. We'll pull those wires out. We're going to actually add a little junction box here to put these wires, pull them out, put them right into here, and then we'll loop from this junction box back to here. The reason we're doing it that way is because these connections, making them inside here, are a little bit hard and cumbersome to do. So we're going to want to not touch those connections at all. And then the last step we're going to need to do is, this is the wire that actually feeds from the EP800 into our critical loads panel right here. we're going to need to, since that's going to be about 18 inches higher, we're going to pull back a little bit of the wire here and cut some of this flex conduit, probably about 18 inches of the flex conduit off as well. And that's it. It should be a pretty easy process. So let's get to work on it. So here's what comes inside the box with the new battery. You've got some anchors, lag screws, these little angle clips that basically you can screw to the battery and screw to the wall. Some little miscellaneous screws that you could use for different wires. Got the communication cable, negative battery cable, positive battery cable, and they just clip on there. It's really nice, really easy to use. And then you've got a ground wire as well that comes with it. And then obviously you got the battery in the box underneath this. And it has two little covers, one cover for each side of the battery. And that's what you get inside the box. So one thing you're going to want to do before working on EP800 is make sure you shut down the power from the solar panels going to the EP800. So that's this DC isolator switch I have right here. There we go. So in order to still have power to all of the circuits we have on this panel, which is like 95% of this home, and be able to change this battery out safely, we need to kill power to the EP800. So there is this lockout switch here. And how this works is we have the grid coming in right here as our backup. So that's the backup feed there. And right here is the power that actually comes from the Bluetti. That's why we have EP800 written right here. Comes from the Bluetti EP800, feeds this breaker, which hots up this whole panel right here. So there is this lockout switch where if you basically have the grid on, the EP800 can't be on because this little metal toggle thing here pulls it over. So we're just going to switch it to the other side where it's off on the EP800, but the grid's still powering this panel, so we can still run the whole house while we're doing this battery swap. All right, now that the solar panels are turned off, so I've got no power coming from the solar panels into the PV input, I now need to switch. I'm going to put the switch into the off position on the app, and that will shut power down from going over to our critical loads panel. All right, so that is now done. And now I'm going to switch off all of the battery breakers so we have no power flowing up into the inverter. So here we go. That one's off. Next battery. That one's off. And the third battery. That is now off. All right, now the whole system should be shut down. Now we should be safe to go ahead and disconnect the battery or disconnect the inverter, take that off, and add the next battery to it. And actually one step before, even though we have no power coming from the solar panels because I hit that DC isolator switch, I'm still going to hit the off button here for the PV disconnect. Now we should be good to go ahead and take these bolts. We'll take these cables off, unscrew the ground wire there. We're going to need to disconnect the wire that's going up, over, and into here, which we actually already did. That's where these wires are hanging out here. We're going to disconnect those and pull those out. So we'll have this basically free, and also we'll disconnect the wires that go into here to this disconnect so we can free up this inverter altogether to pull off and set it on the ground so we can put the next battery up there and then put it all together. Okay, so now we got to disconnect the solar panel wire from the inverter here. So there's little pins back there you got to press in, which I already did to make this easy, but remove the positive, and remove the negative. All right, so let's remove the ground wire. I got to be careful not to drop this screw, which is hard to do one-handed while holding the camera. All right, next thing I'm going to do is remove the cover to this so I can disconnect the antenna that goes in there. There's 4 screws you're going to need on each of the corners. All right, so now I got the screws out. Let's take this cover off. There we go. Cover's off completely. Now we got to disconnect all of these cables. So let's connect first. This is the antenna wire. So I'm going to disconnect that by unscrewing it and just pulling it out. I'll feed that all the way back through so it's out of the way. Now let's disconnect the battery communication cable here. There we go. Battery communication cable out. We can just leave that dangling. Now we're going to have to disconnect both the positive and the negative battery connection. And to disconnect the battery connection, we're going to have to take off these 4 screws on each side there. And always double check there is no voltage going through these things. All right, battery covers are off. Now we got to disconnect these. All right, so these cables are now disconnected. Now I'm going to need to open up this panel right here and actually disconnect these battery cables as well, because this is the only one that's not a quick disconnect. So we'll need to reuse these up here for the next battery. So let's take this off and remove those. Then we should be ready to remove the inverter and put the new battery on. All right, screws are removed from this cover, so let's pull this thing off. There we go. Now we just need to disconnect these right here, and we are ready to remove the inverter. And these have little red tabs on the side, so you just squeeze them together and pull. And that's how easy it is. Same thing with the negative. There we go, we're removed. Okay, one last thing before we remove the inverter off the top here is there is a little yellow wire in there. That is a ground wire that connects this one to the inverter, this battery to the inverter. So we got to open this cover up and disconnect that before we can take it off. Cover's off, so we just have to take that ground wire off. Done deal. All right, so we pulled the inverter off first, pulled that down, and then we added this new battery, which for some reason my video stopped recording midstream. I found that out after we put them on there. Definitely a two-person job, guys. You cannot do this by yourself. And then after we added this battery, we put the inverter back on, and now it's time to just do all the connections again. Just do exactly what we did in reverse, and we should be good to go. All right, so next step, I want to get all the grounds back on there. So I already put this one on. Now I'm going to put the new one right here, from right there to up here, right in that area there. And then also on this side, I want to connect this ground wire also back to up here. All right, so we got the grounds now connected from the new battery up to the inverter ground. Now I'm working on this ground from the solar panel wires. I need to get back up there. To do that, I got to move this little junction box where I converted from THHN wire from the solar panels to our PV wire in here that goes up. We'll plug back in up there where the PV connect is. So I will now unscrew this box and bring it up higher. And I do have slack for the solar panel wire underneath the deck here down there, so I can easily move that box up about 18 inches. So I'll move it probably right in this area right here. So next step after getting that ground wire on there was to connect these positive and negative battery cables to the inverter. And I am leaving them disconnected. As you can see here, I've kept the rubber grommet on there covering that. I'll do those connections last. So let's move on to the next thing here. I'm going to put the covers on these. All right, now it's time to hook up the antenna. So this little blue box here, gray box, is the antenna. So I'm going to run this back through up here, bring it down in, and it's going to connect right into link port 1 here. It just kind of pushes and snaps in. It's pretty simple. All right, so here is the inverter at the top, and you've got the new battery right here, and you've got the original, one of the original batteries here. So one thing that I need to do is, there's originally this communication to the inverter, this port here, but right now it's going to the battery. So I actually need to disconnect this all together. I do not need the 2 PCS one on this one. I need a cable going from this side to the new battery. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to disconnect this one, and I'm going to put it into the pack link in from the old battery. And that just snaps right in. I'm going to feed that in. And now this is going to connect to the pack link out on the new battery. So this is the new battery here. Now we're going to snap that in. Okay, clicked in. Good to go. Now we can go from the 2 PCS right here into the link port 2 on the inverter. All right, so that one's on there. All right, that is in place. Now I'm going to put the covers on all of these 2 batteries in the inverter. And we'll plug in the solar panel wires. This thing should be just about all hooked up. So one thing I almost forgot to do here is connect the new battery to the existing battery. So we're going to slide this positive one in here. We're going to slide this negative one in over here, and they just snap right in place. So it's so easy. They're just like a little push connect. So let's do that. It'll click in place. Do the same thing with the bottom one here. All right, there, clipped in. Now let's put the communication cable back on there. There we go. There we go. We'll do that same thing on the positive side. So I'm now going to go ahead and make the last battery connection, which is this connection right here, and snap that negative and positive that connects it to the inverter. And then we can put all the covers on and we are ready to fire it up. There we go, that's snapped in. Communication cable back on. There we go. All right, let's throw the covers back on and then we'll plug the solar panel wires in. I caught myself in a mistake here. So this ground wire I actually had pushed behind here and kind of sandwiched it back there. All right, so I rerouted the ground wire so it just kind of comes right through here, plugs in right in the middle where it has the little ground symbol between the, right below the PV2 there. And now it's time to plug in the solar panel cables. So I'm gonna plug these in and I'm gonna plug it back into the bottom port here because bottom port can do 6,000 watts and the top port up here, which I'm not using, can use 3,000, which we're not even using right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug these back in. All right, negative's in place. All right, here's our DC breaker. So I'm gonna flip that to the on position. And now we are sending power from our solar panels back to the EP800 inverter. All right, so now power from the solar panels are coming to the EP800 here. I'm gonna switch now on the disconnect. So I turn that to the on position. Next step would be to turn on the DC battery breakers. There's 1, 2, 3, and here's number 4. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on the battery button here, the on-off button on the first battery. Let's see if that lights up green. And then we got all right, first one's green. First one lit up green. The second one lit up green. Third one lit up green. And fourth one lit up green. So you don't even have to press the buttons on battery 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and next step is to turn on the grid power or the backup power from your disconnect switch. There we go. That is on. And we got a green light up here, which is good. That means the system's booting up like it should. Okay, next step is go to the app and you got to go to the settings and you've got to turn on the system switch. So it's right here, system switch. So I'm going to toggle that over. It asks turn on the system switch. We're going to hit OK. There we go. System switch is on. And let's go back. Now we're producing solar production. Perfect. So it looks like we're back up and running. We started with the batteries at 94% or 96%. And now that we added this one, it dropped down to 78. So I guess that battery is probably around 50% charge. And we're going to have to top them off now. And so we'll go ahead and top those batteries off and get us a full charge and make sure we're fully charged up on that new battery. And we should be good to go. Now, as you can see, it's not hard to add one of these batteries to your system as long as you have 2 people. And I'll leave a link in the description of this video where you can purchase one of these B500 batteries. So for those of you who want to have whole home battery backup storage and expand the system as your budget allows, adding additional batteries and solar panels later on after the installation, then the EP800 here is definitely something to look into. Well, that's it for now, everyone. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more content just like this, and we'll see you in the next video.